for the sake of my children. This is a tragic love story of an Australian Christian girl who falls in love with a Saudi Muslim man, then converts to Islam, marries her Arab lover, and travels with him to the Islamic world. She spends over 10 years among Muslims in Saudi Arabia and Afghanistan, being held as captive wife by her Muslim husband in the Mujahideen training camps against her will. When she manages somehow to flee and return to the Western world, she writes her sad life story as a book under the title Child and the Abuse of Muslim Women. It was written in English and translated into Arabic by Dr. A. Ahmed. Copyright. All rights are reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author, except by a reviewer, who may quote brief paragraphs in a review to be printed in a newspaper, journal, magazine, or school journal. All characters in this book are fictitious. Another sample is to real people. Living or dead is purely coincidental. Chapter 31. A new Western female friend of the Australian widow. Many people in the Muslim world understand the war on terror as the war against Islam itself. But the so-called Islamic extremists, mujahideen and terrorists are nothing but the followers of the pure form of Islam taught and practiced by the Prophet Muhammad and his companions, who were the first Muslims. Therefore, the Islamic terrorists are the true Muslims, while the so-called moderate Muslims do not faithfully and obediently follow the teachings of the Quran and the hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad. Western leaders, media, and universities in Western countries such as Europe, America, Canada, Australia are trying to convince people otherwise. Many Western leaders have wrongly claimed that terrorist groups such as ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Taliban, Muslim Brotherhood, Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab, Janjaweed, Hamas, Hezbollah, and many others in the Muslim world are not true Muslim, but rather have a twisted version of Islam, which is the religion of peace, as they believe. By this, they mean that the terrorists have a wrong knowledge or ideology of Islam. These worldly leaders and famous Western media agencies such as CNN and BBC World News always present moderate Muslims as true Muslims, while describing Islamic terrorists as extremists or fanatics. Despite this, the verses of the Quran and the hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad support and praise Islamic terrorists, promise them great rewards, and openly and vigorously condemn moderate Muslims as infidels and hypocrites. Anyway, when Sheikh Mohammed Noor al-Faransawi arrived in Pakistan, he had one American wife named Nadia Noor. They, as we mentioned earlier, were Christians and converted to Islam. Like the Australian girl Susan Peterson, who changed her Christian religion and changed her name to Irshad al-Shambari. The two lovers, Muhammad and Nadia, were known before converting to Islam as John and Mary. At that time, the couple did not have any children. As soon as they graduated from the Islamic madrasa or religious schools in Pakistan and moved to the Mujahideen camps in the Swat Valley, some Muslim leaders encouraged Mohammed Noor al-Faransawi to have a second Muslim wife because the Quran allows him to have 4 wives at the same time, as is mentioned in Surah An-Nisa 4 verse 3. But the second marriage caused a serious problem between him and his first American wife. Nadia found it difficult to share her husband with a beautiful young Afghani girl. The second wife is a minor, 15 years younger than her, and 25 years younger than her husband, Muhammad. But the American wife, Nadia, was afraid of being accused of apostasy and executed on the spot if she questioned the verse of the Quran which says that a Muslim man has a legal religious license to marry 4 women at the same time. The Quran says to Muslim men, and if you fear that you will not be just with regard to orphans, then marry as many women as pleases you. 2, 3, or 4. Surah An-Nisa 4 verse 3. This verse authorizes a Muslim man to marry 4 women at the same time and allows him to have sex with slave girls or female prisoners of war without marrying. And this, of course, is rape or adultery, permissible in Islam, the so-called religion of peace and love and tolerance. Moreover, the Prophet Muhammad used to sleep with a minor girl of 9 years old, who was younger than him by 4 decades and 4 years. And he had 11 wives and 2 female slaves, Maria and Rehana, and he had sex with all of them, meaning he committed adultery with all 13 women in a halal rape. American wife Nadia began her Islamic life in the same way Australian wife Rashad began her abusive married life in Saudi Arabia. She was deceived by the Muslim community in Paris. It made her believe that Islam is the only religion that honors women and places them in the highest religious and social status. She was also told that other religions have turned women into dolls to expose the female sexy body in order to promote certain products as if they were slaves, while Islam commanded her to hide her body and show it only to her husband. She was further told that Islam treats men and women equally by creating them from one soul. Islam calls all Muslims brothers and sisters and thus discourages racial discrimination. Simply put, Nadia was told many good things about Islam that had nothing to do with it all. Unfortunately, Nadia, like Irshad, honestly believed every lie she was told about Islam. However, when she came to Pakistan and experienced real Islam with true Muslims, she discovered too late that she had been deceived. Moreover, Nadia, like Irshad, found herself detained in Mujahideen camps against her will. She was 8 months pregnant when her husband took the 13-year-old Afghani girl as legal Muslim wife number 2. By her Western standards, this marriage is child abuse and rape of a minor girl. However, her new faith in Islam would not allow her to use the Western standard to get the Islamic license mentioned in the Holy Quran in Surah An-Nisa 4 verse 3. When she objected, she was silenced with an authentic hadith which showed that the Prophet Muhammad married and had sex with a 9-year-old child bride named Aisha. Her husband proudly read to her the famous hadith that is on the tip of every Muslim man's tongue. The messenger wrote the marriage contract with Aisha when she was 6 years old, and he consummated the marriage with her when she was 9 years old, and she stayed with him for 9 years. Sahih al-Bukhari, book 62, hadith number 89. He also showed her a verse in the Muslim book of the Holy Quran that allows a Muslim man to marry and have sex with minor girl in Surah Al-Talaq 65 verse 4. The second serious problem that the American wife faces with her French husband is his terrorist activities. She discovered that her husband was promoted in a short time to the rank of Amir Harbi, or a leader of jihad, and under his leadership there are hundreds of mujahideen who he sends from time to time to carry out terrorist operations in Pakistan, India, and Afghanistan. Moreover, her husband always boasted of his intelligence in masterminding successful terrorist attacks against NATO forces in Afghanistan and assassinating some prominent Muslim political leaders in Pakistan. Whenever Nadia tried to persuade her husband to hold back his hand from the shedding of innocent blood, he would always silence her by quoting verses from the Holy Quran and referring her to the many authentic hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad to justify the killing of infidels in jihad in the cause of God. After giving birth to her first child, Nadia discovered that her husband had become one of the most wanted leaders of Islamic terrorists in the world. She decided to leave him and run away with her child out of Pakistan and try to return to America. But in practice, Nadia found that her escape from those strongholds of terrorists in the Swat Valley was next to impossible. She also expected that the Pakistani police would arrest her and throw her behind bars for her association with the Mujahideen, especially her marriage to a wanted terrorist leader. She may be sold by the Pakistani authority to the American Marines. Nadia was told that the CIA had promised a 5,000 US dollar reward to any police officer or a Pakistani citizen who would report a terrorist or anyone associated with the Islamic Mujahideen. Such a Muslim terrorist, after his arrest, will be severely interrogated and then transferred to Guantanamo Bay Detention Center. Many innocent Pakistanis and Afghans were falsely accused of terrorists and for financial gains sold to the U.S. Marines. Accordingly, Nadia finds herself, like Irshad, stuck in the strongholds of these Islamic terrorists against her will. Meanwhile, the Australian widow Irshad Shamari had begun searching for her two kidnapped sons, Abu Bakr and Umar, in some small towns and villages on the border between Pakistan and India. For a few months, her efforts came to nothing. No one seemed to have seen or heard of two abducted sons from the names she gave them and the description she mentioned. Finally, the widow Irshad received some advice from a retired former terrorist leader of the jihad against the infidels, following a dangerous ambush in which he fell, which led to the amputation of his both legs and hands. The commander told her that he knew her sons and that they were under his command. After his fatal accident, the Mujahideen who were under his supervision spread all over the country. Then he told her that the last things he heard about her two sons, Abu Bakr and Umar, was that they were carrying out jihad against the foreign Christian infidels in the Swat Valley. The last place on earth that the Australian mother Irshad would like to return to is the Valley of the Shadow of Death. She fears that anything will happen to her in her voluntary return to the strongholds of Islamic terrorists. The Mujahideen may accuse her of treason to escape with her 6 Muslim children out of Pakistan against the wish of her late husband. She remembered the letter written by her late husband instructing her not to smuggle his Muslim 7 children out of the Mujahideen camps and transfer them to the land of the infidels, Australia or anywhere else in the West. She also believed that the news of her conversion to Christianity had already reached those who knew her before, and therefore they might accuse her of apostasy and put her to death. She may also be sentenced to death for allowing Christian families in Canada to adopt her Muslim sons and daughters. However, for the sake of her 2 sons, the brave woman decided to take the risk and return to the Swat Valley, which she knows is more dangerous than the Valley of the Shadow of Death mentioned by the prophet David in one of his psalms. And that she is a Christian now. She has decided that she will pretend that she is still believer in Islam. After spending many days traveling by train, trucks, and even animals such as donkeys, oxen, and horses, the Australian widow Irshad Shamar finally reached the strongholds of Muslim terrorists in the Valley of the Shadow of Death. She has no protection for her life other than her new found faith in her Lord Jesus Christ. Whenever she faced danger, she would pray to the Lord, and He would always answer her. But by the time Irshad reached Swat Valley, the Pakistani government had allowed Taliban and Al Qaeda terrorists fleeing Afghanistan to implement Islamic Sharia laws. Therefore, the Mujahideen of the Taliban are the sole rulers and judges in those places. The Pakistani government has no power or control over all the cities and towns in that dreaded valley. Accordingly, the flogging of thieves, the stoning of adulterers, and the beheading of apostates and traitors are common practices in that Islamic region, which is forbidden to enter for Western infidels from NATO troops, Western radio correspondents, and every non-Muslim. Every day, people gather in their hundreds to witness this corporeal punishment as if they were in a Roman Colosseum, where condemned people were eaten alive by hungry lions or forced to fight with mighty titanic gladiators. These ruthless Muslims enjoy watching the horrific scenes of beheadings and stoning more than Europeans enjoy watching football matches. Australian widow Irshad Shambari has arrived in the strongholds of the Taliban and Al Qaeda after a very long and stressful journey. She hid her face and her entire body in the humiliating Islamic burqa or ibaya and niqab. As soon as word of her return reached the ears of the woman who had known her in the past, she was welcomed by them as a great hero or a fighter soldier. It was as if this oppressed and tortured Muslim woman lived on a different planet and therefore had not heard anything about what happened to her during her 7 years of wandering. When they learned that she had spent 4 years in the notorious infidels prison at Guantanamo Bay Detention Center, they praised her courage and suffering in the way of Allah. The Australian mother Irshad was not surprised by the ignorance of this Muslim woman because she knew that none of them went to school and that none of them had access to radio or television. However, she fears that when these women tell their husbands, her hidden secret may be exposed and thus she may face dire consequences. Mother Irshad began her search in the Swat Valley very carefully and secretly. She avoided contact with any prominent Muslim leader among the Mujahideen. She focused her inquiry on women's circles and groups of private and women-only religious congregations. In a short period, Irshad became friends with some Pakistani and Afghani women. Through her female friends, she tried to find out if their husbands, sons, or brothers had heard of 2 brothers named Abu Bakr and Omar Mustafa Shambari. Although these women asked their husbands and other male relatives about the sons of Irshad, none of them had heard of these names among the Mujahideen. She knew her next chance was to turn to Arab women, but her previous life among the Mujahideen made her know that the wives and daughters of the Arab Mujahideen have more knowledge of the outside world than the local woman. As a result, she fears that she will be in serious trouble if any Arab woman recognizes her and reveals to her Muslim men her apostasy from Islam and conversion to Christianity. As Irshad wonders about her next move, an Afghani woman informs her about the American Muslim woman Nadia Noor, the first wife of the French man Sheikh Mohammed Noor Al-Faransawi. This woman believed that Nadia would be able to help Irshad locate her 2 missing sons. In addition, the Australian widow Irshad learned from that local woman that Nadia is a white woman like herself and that her husband is also a white man. The Australian woman liked the suggestion and asked the Afghan woman to introduce her to the white woman Nadia. By the time the widow Irshad arrived in Swat Valley, the American wife Nadia had 2 children with her French husband, Mohammed Noor. Her husband had already had 4 wives by that time. The other 2 of his wives are 2 underage Afghani girls and a little Pakistani girl. He married 2 of these girls in 1 year and married the 4th wife the following year. Although Sheikh Mohammed Noor al-Faransawi is on the list of the U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation as one of the most wanted terrorists in the world, he still manages his married life in a way that no one knew when he came to sleep with his wives and when he left them. One fact is clear to the Pakistani ISI that Sheikh Mohammed Noor al-Faransawi is living a normal married life, which has resulted in all his 4 wives becoming pregnant and all the women giving birth to his children. The American wife Nadia Noor was very happy when she met the Australian widow Irshad al-Shambari. At first, Irshad was cautious in informing Nadia of the reason for her return. However, when the American wife talked about her misery and suffering in that hellish place of the terrorist Mujahideen and her desire to escape from Pakistan and return to her motherland in the United States of America with her 2 children, the Australian mother told her the reason for her return to Swat Valley. Moreover, Nadia shared with Irshad how her French husband changed when he came to Pakistan and how the Muslim community in Paris deceived her about the status of women in Islam. While the American wife was telling her bitter experience of living in a terrorist environment, the Australian widow felt as if she could hear her voice telling her bitter experience and her tragic life story. Nadia's experience is familiar to her bitter experience, and her misery is like her misery as well. The only difference between the 2 white women is that Irshad miraculously managed to escape from those concentration camps, but Nadia is still being held as a prisoner wife with her 2 children against her will. Encouraged by Nadia's frankness and openness, Irshad trusted her and revealed some of her secrets to her, but she did not tell her about leaving Islam and embracing Christianity. Moreover, Irshad informs Nadia that she plans to return to her country, Australia, once she finds her 2 kidnapped sons, Abu Bakr and Umar. Then Nadia promised Irshad that she would try to help her get information about her 2 missing sons. But how will she do that? The American girl Nadia Noor refused to reveal that secret information to her new Australian friend. Irshad confided in Nadia and promised that she would try to help her escape if she was serious about leaving Pakistan and returning to her motherland without her French Muslim husband. As the days passed, the friendship between the 2 white women gradually developed until the 2 friends revealed to each other the heavy hidden secrets that they had kept from each other in the beginning. Nadia told Irshad that she did something good by abandoning the dreaded Islam that was filled with misogynistic teachings and terrorism, and returning to Christianity, the peaceful religion that values women and gives them equal rights with their male counterparts. She also told her that if she could escape from Pakistan, return to her country, America, she would do the same and openly expose the deceptions and evils of Islam. Australian widow Irshad encouraged American wife Nadia to start praying to Jesus Christ even before she ran away. Nadia follows the advice of her friend Irshad apostatized from Islam, converted to Christianity, and started praying to the Lord Jesus from her heart. Chapter 32, the two white Western women's escape plan. Despite her promise of help, Australian woman Irshad begins to doubt she can help her new American friend Nadia escape with her two children once she finds out who she married. She fears that Nadia will be captured by the Pakistani police and tortured once she ventures out of Swat Valley. She knows in this valley that the Pakistani police have no power or control. Irshad also doubted Nadia's return to her country of origin upon knowing the identity of her terrorist husband, who is wanted by the US government. The fact that Nadia is the wife of such a dangerous terrorist leader as Sheikh Mohammed Noor al-Faransawi would put the American woman in more trouble with the CIA in her country than the Australian Irshad was exposed to in Canada. Therefore, the widow Irshad suggested that the wife Nadia not approach the American embassy in Islamabad and not try to leave Pakistan through any airport or a port. The only safe way out for her is to try to smuggle herself and her two children across the Pakistani-Indian border in the disputed Kashmir region between the two countries. If she can do so, she must hide her identity and follow the same process that Irshad followed when she ended up in New Delhi and became a refugee. She must pretend to be a French Muslim woman and her French husband has been killed by Muslim terrorists in Pakistan. Nadia accepted her friend Irshad's advice and waited for the right time to escape. Although the Australian widow warned her of the danger she would face if she took the same path she took 7 years ago, the American woman said she was ready to face any danger in order to flee from those terrorist strongholds. Like Irshad, Nadia is determined not to raise her two sons among these ruthless Muslim barbarians. She does not want them to follow in the footsteps of their father, the dangerous terrorist leader, Mohammed Noor al-Faransawi. Meanwhile, Australian mother Irshad al-Shammari waited patiently for 6 months before her friend, the American wife, Nadia Noor, finally found out what happened to her two sons, who were kidnapped from her at gunpoint. According to information collected by Nadia from some reliable sources, the son Abu Bakr, who is the son of Irshad with her Saudi husband Mustafa, participated in the terrorist attacks at Lakshara Taiba on the Taj Mahal Palace Hotel in Bombay, India. He was killed by Indian commandos along with other terrorists. There was only one terrorist who was arrested, tried and sentenced to death by the Bombay High Court and hung 1 year after his arrest. Her second son, Omar Mustafa Shammari, was killed in an airstrike launched by an American drone on the Mujahideen in the Swat Valley. The sad news was very devastating and heartbreaking for the Australian mother Irshad. She concluded that she had lost all 9 of her children and that the only person to blame was herself. After receiving this heartbreaking news, the heartbroken mother decided to get as far as possible from those who brainwashed her two sons and caused their untimely deaths. However, she knows that wherever she goes, she will bring with her memories of the grim reality of being for so long a Muslim wife of a notorious terrorist. It is like the stigma written all over her face or the mark of the beast 666 that nothing can erase from her life of persecution and abuse. The widow Irshad did not feel sorry for the death of her late husband Mustafa. Even after many years, she still hates him and holds him responsible for all her misery, suffering, imprisonment, and persecution in her painful life that she lived in the Islamic world, and even her imprisonment in Kandahar, Afghanistan, and on Guantanamo Bay Detention Center. It was he who deceived her with his false love and introduced her to that satanic cult that is universally called Islam, what is falsely called the religion of peace. Because of him, she entered the maximum security prison, Guantanamo Bay, which is reserved for the worst Muslim terrorists, and was imprisoned there for 4 years, and she was deprived of all her 9 children. Therefore, the Australian widow Irshad has always hated her Saudi husband Mustafa with bitterness, and wished in her heart that he would burn in the fire of hell forever and ever. Mother Irshad's bitter experience of marrying a terrorist made her understand how her friend Nadia is going through at the present time. In her heart, she hoped that the American mother Nadia would not go through those painful experiences of entering prison and losing all her children as she went through. She even prayed to God to grant her white friend a safe exit from Pakistan and easy and safe return to her native America. She hoped that the beautiful American woman would not be gang raped by military soldiers on the Pakistani-Indian border, and that the terrorists would not kidnap her 2 sons from her, as happened to her and her late 2 sons many years ago. While she was praying for Nadia, Irshad felt it was her duty as a good Christian to help her friend with her escape plan. She knows that it is dangerous for a young and beautiful girl like Nadia to flee with her 2 and 3 old sons across the dangerous Pakistani and Indian borders between those dangerous snowy mountains. She needs someone who knows the way to accompany her. The widow Irshad recalled the guidance of the parable of the Good Samaritan that Jesus had taught his disciples. Believing in the good teaching of her God, the Australian woman decided to sacrifice her safety for her American friend. She also remembered the kindness and love of the good American guard who fell in love with her in her solitary confinement in Guantanamo Bay Detention Center. She named him the Good Samaritan because he did not tell her her real name. It was his secret love, hugs, and warm kisses in her cells, which she used to experience with him, that made her spend 4 years in that hellish prison without becoming depressed, insane, or attempting suicide. Having come to this conclusion, Irshad revealed her decision to her friend Nadia. The American wife was deeply moved by the rare love and sacrifice she had never experienced in her life. So Nadia thanked Irshad a million times and told her that she would never forget such sacrificial love, and that could never emanate from the heart of a Muslim woman, but only a Christian woman can do that. Then the 2 white friends decide to escape under cover from the strongholds of the Taliban. They know that in this male-dominated society, a woman will not be allowed to leave her home alone without the company of her husband or a close male relative, such as her father or brother. It is a serious crime punishable by Sharia law if a woman is caught walking in the street alone, even if she is accompanied by another woman. For this reason, the 2 friends, Irshad and Nadia, decided to leave at a time when neither the armed Islamic guards nor the other Muslim men could discover them. They know from experience that the only time nearly every man is out of sight is the public Friday noon prayer. For an hour, all men, young and old, must attend the compulsory communal Friday prayers in mosques. It is against the law in all Muslim countries for a man to skip that prayer without a real reason or an acceptable legitimate excuse. And sometimes illness is not an excuse. In countries that have implemented Sharia law, such as Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iran, Somalia, and Sudan, any male aged 7 years and over who is not found inside a mosque on a Friday afternoon will be beaten mercilessly by God's so-called correctional police of Allah. Sometimes these policemen of God would knock on people's homes and check if there were men hiding inside. By law, every man must close his shop or office and house and attend the compulsory Friday prayers. When the two friends hatched their escape plan, it was Sunday. They must wait for 5 days before they can carry out their plan. During those days, they revive the details of their expected to be difficult escape and prepare everything they deem it necessary for their long and perilous journey from the Swat Valley in Pakistan to the Kashmir district of India. The Australian widow told the American wife that the Indian army would possibly detain them when they crossed the border. Irshad hid from Nadia her bitter experience with the 3 Indian soldiers who arrested, beat, and gun raped her. She didn't want to put too much fear into her friend's heart. Moreover, she believed that not every Indian man was as evil as those 3 soldiers who had brutally beaten and raped her cruelly in their military detention. Whether it was divine intervention or bad luck, on Thursday evening, when the two Western friends had less than 24 hours left to carry out their risky escape plan, something unexpected happened. While Irshad is in her tent in the evening, Nadia unexpectedly walks in on her. The expression on her sad face revealed that she has some bad news to tell. Irshad shouted at her friend, "What happened?" "I have bad and sad news. I won't be able to escape with you at noon tomorrow." "Why can't you escape?" "Because my French husband, Mohammed Noor, is coming to spend some time with me." "Why don't you ignore his request and let us run away before he comes?" "I can't do that. The people he sent to take me to him are here, and they won't let me escape alive." "Who are they?" "They are his men. They are from the Pakistani police, not from the Mujahideen. They are very dangerous and hold high positions in the intelligence of the Pakistani police ISI." "Where will they take you to meet him?" "I have no knowledge, but they usually take me to meet him at a hotel. But I don't know which hotel. Every time they take me to meet him in another hotel and a different city or a village." "Are you going to take your 2 sons with you?" "No. He is only interested in sex, not his 2 kids or his other children, whom he fathered with his other 3 Muslim wives." "Where are you going to keep your sons?" "Usually I keep them with my babysitter. I pay her money for it. Since you are here, I appreciate if you did it for me. I'll pay you too." "Of course, it is my pleasure to take care of your children. But how long will you be away?" "I don't know that either. That depends on him. It may take a few hours or longer. Usually he would spend a few hours with me and his 3 other women, and soon he would run away and leave. He is always hiding and running from the US Marines and the NATO military forces." Irshad became deep in thought for a few seconds before she asked Nadia, "Do you really love him? And would you like to have sex with him?" I used to love him when we were intimate lovers in France. But after we came here, a lot has changed. From being an angel of love, he turned into a demon of death. He married many women next to me and killed many innocent people. Every now and then, he sends young teenage mujahideen on suicide missions. His hands are stained with the blood of many innocent people. I really don't love him anymore, but I hate him so bitterly that I wish him death. That is why I don't mind leaving him, taking my children and running away from him. Well, that is a good word. I will take care of your two sons in your absence while you are away with your husband. But I am still on my word. If not this Friday, I will run away with you next Friday for sure. Well, we will talk about it again. Just go, my dear, to him now. Pretend as if you never meet me. I will definitely do that. Sometimes our best friends may make decisions on our behalf that seem wrong and dangerous to us, but in the long run prove to be in our favor. This is exactly what Australian woman Irshad decided to do for her American friend Nadia. She decides to inform the police about the location of her friend's notorious terrorist husband. Irshad already knew from the media that the CIA was desperately looking for him. He was placed on the FBI's list of the world's top 3 most wanted terrorists. She also learned that the US government promised a reward of $50 million for the person who would provide information on his hiding place. The abused Australian widow is not interested in reward, but her main concern is to save innocent people from the hands of such a ruthless terrorist. Moreover, the Australian mother Irshad considered it a golden opportunity for the police to arrest the dangerous Muslim leader Sheikh Mohammed Noor al-Faransawi while he was meeting with his American wife Nadia and his 3 other Muslim wives. However, the question that puzzled her was, how will she approach the Pakistani police and inform them of Sheikh Mohammed Noor al-Faransawi while the Pakistani police are protecting him? This dangerous act could be fatal for her and her friend. If the Pakistani police inform him that a white female confidant of his fairest Muslim wife is trying to arrest him, he may arrange for his American woman and her Australian friend to be killed as well. After serious consideration, the Australian mother Irshad gave up the idea of reporting him to the police and decided to wait for her American friend Nadia to meet her French husband and return. But suddenly, a brilliant idea flashed in her mind and she decided to give it a try. She felt as if this thought had been injected into her mind by some supernatural being. It is like a revelation from God. She remembered her good Samaritan Christian guard at Guantanamo Bay, who gave her a copy of the Gideon Holy Bible and invited her to attend Sunday services at church. Due to the restrictions of the detention center, Australian detainee Irshad and her American boyfriend could not push their friendship beyond those closet walls. Despite this, she has enjoyed his friendship for 4 years and his willingness to help her, even if it sometimes puts his job at risk. As she loved him, she knew he loved her too. She still loves him very much and hopes to meet him outside the notorious Getmo detention center of the Muslim terrorists and marry him. She remembered many times she allowed him to kiss her in the lips and fondle her breast and private parts. The good time he gave her in her solitary cell gave her a wonderful time and prevent her from killing herself. At any rate, after her release, the British Australian woman Irshad became so busy with her children's custody that she almost forgot about her loving, handsome American boyfriend. She did neither write to him nor try to communicate with him in any way. She doesn't even know his name despite their long love. She called him the Good Samaritan, and he was glad to hear that Christian name. However, on that Thursday evening, nearly 2 years later, the beautiful Australian woman Irshad decided to speak to her boyfriend, the handsome American guard at Guantanamo Bay, and seek his advice on such a serious matter. During her legal dispute with the CIA while in Australia, and while she was trying to get her name removed from the blacklist and people who cannot be flown by aeroplane, Irshad obtained it from her lawyer the phone number of the detention camp at Guantanamo Bay. She even overheard some phone conversations between her Australian lawyer and some U.S. Marines in that terrorist detention center. That evening, Irshad decided to call her former detention center and ask them to let her talk to her American guard. She used a local Pakistani phone center known as STD and made her call. When Irshad called, it was evening in Pakistan and day in Guantanamo Island. That evening, the sweet beloved Australia Irshad spoke to her boyfriend, the beloved American, and revealed to him the reason for her call. Her boyfriend took the information seriously and reported it to his senior responsible boss. Irshad was praised by some senior CIA agents for her courage and willingness to assist the law in apprehending such a dangerous terrorist as Mohammed Noor al-Faransawi. During her phone conversation, these CIA agents ordered Australian mother Irshad to follow her American friend Nadia and those who had come to take her to her dangerous terrorist husband Mohammed Noor al-Faransawi. She was told that she should not tell them she was following them or let them know about her. Even her friend Nadia should not know about that. Once she knew where Nadia would meet her husband, the CIA agents gave Irshad a local phone number and told her to call that number and tell the person answering the call the name of the place and hotel where the dangerous terrorist leader Mohammed Noor al-Faransawi, who was wanted dead or alive, was staying. After that, she was told that her duty would be finished. She will then be free to go wherever she wants to go. Irshad set some conditions for the CIA agents that she would not follow her American friend unless she is given a solemn promise that she will not be harmed and that the persecuted Muslim wife Nadia Noor will be given the right to return to America and be received as a great hero and not as the wife of a dangerous terrorist leader. CIA agents accepted her terms. In fact, Irshad has lied to the American agents by telling that her American friend Nadia is an important figure in her plan to capture her evil French husband. And she was the one who suggested the plan. She lied to protect her friend. After her phone call, Irshad arranged with an Afghan woman to babysit Nadia's 2 children. She does not want her American friend to doubt her good intentions, so she decides to keep her 2 children with a babysitter and follow her secretly without her knowledge and the knowledge of those who came to take her to her husband. The hotel where the first Muslim wife Nadia and the 3 other wives of the notorious Islamic terrorist leader Mohammed Noor al-Faransawi were brought by the Pakistani police to spend time with their polygamous husband is a small town near the border between Pakistan and Afghanistan. By orders of the White Devil Mohammed Noor al-Faransawi himself, the hotel is guarded by 50 terrorists armed to the teeth. There are more than 40 Pakistani policemen in addition to this number of his bodyguards. In addition, prior to that day, the Pakistani police intelligence ISI had spent 3 days searching and clearing the town of any suspicious persons. No new visitors have been able to enter the high security area after it was sealed off by the Pakistani police. The town itself is out of reach of the Pakistani army and is a stronghold of the Taliban Al-Qaeda Mujahideen. Accordingly, the capture of the dangerous terrorist leader Mohammed Noor al-Faransawi in that remote town would require more than 1,000 US Marines and other NATO troops. Chapter 33. Heavenly Judgment on the People of Sodom and Gomorrah. Inside the hotel, like the famous polygamist and notorious adulterer, the Abbasid Caliph Harun al-Rashid in his time, the white Sheikh Mohammed Noor al-Faransawi is surrounded by his 4 Muslim wives and a large number of maids from every tribe in Pakistan and Afghanistan. Even Arab British young women were reduced to the status of non-Arab Muslim women and forced to serve and entertain the great French Muslim Caliph or the new Turkish Sultan of the Islamic Empire or Caliphate. Even the Prophet Muhammad in his time did not receive this glorification and a large number of lovely and sexy harems. Each of these beautiful young women and pretty maid servants, according to the new interpretation of the third verse of Surah An-Nisa, is permissible for the French sheikh to sleep with her without the sanctity of the permissible Islamic marriage. In fact, Sheikh Mohammed Noor al-Faransawi sought to return to Islam at its golden age, when the Abbasid caliphs spent billions of dinars entertaining them, and each one slept with hundreds of virgins each year of his life. It was stated in the annals of these caliphs that the caliph would not sleep with the same virgin more than once. Unlike the Prophet Muhammad, no one could have sex with the woman he slept with even after his death. Even Al-Hassan ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib, who was married addict and married 200 women, did not sleep with the number of women and underage female children that Mohammed Noor al-Faransawi slept with and raped. Meanwhile, the Australian widow Shad has been able to follow the 4 cars used by the Pakistani police to transport the 4 Muslim wives of Sheikh Mohammed Noor al-Faransawi to the town where they are supposed to meet their polygamous husband to have sex with him. He also would rape in halal Islamic adultery other beautiful virgin maids, Arabs and Asian. The 4 wives were transported in 4 different vehicles because the police knows that as Muslim rivals, wives, they would quarrel and even they might kill each other out of jealousy as rival wives. Fortunately, because she was a woman, Irshad was able to have easy entry into the forbidden and guarded town. She has actually bribed her Pakistani taxi driver and made him pretend to be her Muslim husband. Therefore, she was not intercepted on the way, nor was she arrested by the correctional police of Allah when she reached the fortified stronghold town. She hid her face and body with a large Islamic abaya and niqab, so she was not identified as a white foreign woman. She could see the presence of these armed terrorists in every nook and cranny of the small town. Therefore, the Australian widow Irshad Shamari questioned the possibility of arresting the French terrorist leader Mohammed Noor al-Faransawi of her American friend Nadia Noor without causing heavy losses in human lives. She even became worried about her life and the safety of Nadia's life. However, the Australian woman Irshad concluded that the lives of the thousands of innocent people killed each year by the mujahideen of the Sheikh Mohammed Noor al-Faransawi must weigh above the lives of very few people in that small town. The Australian widow Irshad kept following those 4 cars until they stopped in front of a beautiful hotel. Then from a distance, she saw her American friend Nadia. Nadia and 3 other varied girls get out of the cars and enter the hotel. She waited a while before deducing that this was the hotel where the pedophile Sheikh planned to spend time with women. Then she jotted down the name of the hotel in her notebook and told her driver to back off and take her to another nearby town. Once in the nearest town, at the outskirts of the previous town, Irshad asked her driver to stop and wait for her to call a female relative. She immediately called the local number given to her, reported the name of the town and the hotel, and said not one more word as to who she was or why she was in that place. Then she waited patiently in that place, expecting to soon see God's judgment upon the rebellious people of the city of Sodom and Gomorrah of the Prophet Lot. Irshad stayed until midnight without seeing any of the U.S. Marines or NATO troops attacking the haunted town and raiding the hotel. Despite this, she continued to stay in her lair. Meanwhile, the Australian widow Irshad Shamari continued to pray to God, asking and begging for the safety of her American friend Nadia Noor. It was about 4 o'clock in the morning when the white foreign woman hiding outside the outskirts of the town suddenly saw the quiet dark night illuminated by the huge flames or bombs dropped by some planes. Airstrikes continued in the small town until Irshad saw the sunrise on the eastern horizon. After seeing flames and smoke and witnessing the constant bombardment of the town, the hiding white woman doubted that anyone was still alive. As a result, she regrets her decision and begins to feel guilty for betraying her American friend Nadia, causing her sudden death and brutally killing her as if she were a Muslim female terrorist with an explosive belt. However, Irshad decides to wait until the airstrikes are over and return to the stricken town and find out what happened to her friend Nadia. After the airstrikes stopped and the bright sunlight lit up the entire area, Irshad waited for some time before starting to move toward the town that had been bombarded by foreign planes. She stopped after she suddenly saw some helicopters flying over the town and some commandos jumping out of them. Irshad saw that some of these commandos with their parachutes had landed near where she sat and watched the war from a distance. She is tempted to show herself to them and tell them that she was reported to the CIA agents about the hideout of the white terrorist Mullah Sheikh Mohammed Noor al-Faransawi, but she is afraid that the commanders will either shoot her or not believe her words. Instead, she just kept sitting in her hideout until she was sure all those commandos had entered town. The Australian woman can hear the gun battle inside the attacked town. She understood that the commandos engaged in fierce street fighting with the Mujahideen. It felt like the final battle between God's angels, led by Archangel Michael, and Lucifer's demons, led by the damning devil himself. This realization gave her hope that her American friend Nadia Noor might still be safe and alive. Brave Australian widow Irshad knew the dangers of returning to the war zone but decided to go. Her taxi driver is reluctant to drive his car to such a dangerous war zone. She promised him she would pay him to double the fares what he would ask if she took her back to the town. Then the cab drove her to the outskirts of town but refused to venture any further. Irshad paid her fares double and continued her dangerous adventure on foot, alone and unarmed. As soon as she entered, she saw the bodies of dead or seriously wounded Mujahideen scattered everywhere in the streets of the stricken town. She can also see the commandos filling the streets with machine guns in hand, ready to shoot anyone who resists. She knows as a woman that she will not be shot until she shows any sign of resistance or a threat to life towards the commanders. Before speaking to the commanders, Irshad revealed her white face and head of blonde hair to show that she was an Australian woman, not a Pakistani or an Afghani woman. Then she began speaking to some of these commanders in fluent English and told them who she was and why she had taken such a high risk to return to town. The commanders tell her that they know nothing about her and her American friend Nadia. They assure her that they would not shoot anyone unless he or she refused to surrender. Ignoring the words of the commanders she spoke to, Irshad headed to the hotel where she knew that her American friend Nadia had come to meet her French terrorist husband, Mohamed Noor. When she arrived at the hotel, she was surprised to learn that this was the only place in the occupied town that had not been hit by airstrikes. Upon her arrival, she finds that the commanders have already entered the hotel and arrested everyone inside, including the staff, workers, and guests. When she tried to enter the hotel, she was told that the place was closed by the U.S. Marines and no one could enter. Then Irshad inquired about the place where the detainees had been taken. No one seemed ready to tell her anything. Then the Australian woman Irshad searched everywhere in the center of the burning town for her American friend Nadia or any information about her. But she did not find anything. She even examined some of the corpses of the Mujahideen, men and women and children killed during their strike, but she was unable to find Nadia's body. Finally, the Pakistani police forced her to leave. By then, the Pakistani police took charge of the town after the NATO commandos withdrew after handing over the occupied place to the local security authority. Irshad decided to go back to the city where she's staying and contact her American boyfriend in Getmo Center. She felt that CIA agents had deceived her and had not kept their promise to ensure the safety of her innocent friend Nadia. Irshad concluded that the commandos failed in their operation to arrest the dangerous terrorist Sheikh Mohamed Noor al-Faransawi as well. Moreover, she thought most likely that the evil leader had fled the hotel and the town during the airstrikes. Perhaps the cowardly Muslim man left his 4 wives and fled alone with the help of the Pakistani police intelligence of ISI. Then the commandos likely capture or kill her friend Nadia Noor and the evil man's other three Muslim wives during their raid on the hotel. In addition, the Australian widow Rashad became very angry because the CIA sent those planes and hit the town and killed many innocent people, men, women, and children, while the real criminal managed to escape safely. Chapter 34. Are we heroes or traitors? As soon as she reached her residence, the angry Australian woman called her American boyfriend in Guantanamo Bay Detention Center and complained about the way NATO forces dealt with the capture of the French terrorist leader, the most wanted Mujahid leader of the Taliban and Al-Qaeda groups. Her boyfriend told her that he did not know how the operation was carried out, but he was certain that Mullah Sheikh Mohammed Noor al-Faransawi was captured and flown to a military base on the Pakistan-Afghanistan border. But with regard to his American wife, Nadia Noor, or the other Muslim wives, the former guard in her solitary confinement in Getmore prison said that he did not know anything about them. He told her that the arrest of the dangerous terrorist Mohammed Noor al-Faransawi was mentioned in the media and that the whole world knew about it. The news of the notorious terrorist capture brings some relief to the Australian widow Rashad, but she remains concerned for the safety of her American friend Nadia. She knows that if Nadia is killed in the process, she will never be able to forgive herself for the rest of her life. At this moment, the mother Irshad remembered her wrong advice to her Canadian friend Shahinaz, which led to the stoning of her daughter Shahrizad and the suicide of her other daughter Shadia. Many years later, she could not forget and forgive herself for the brutal murder of that innocent, beautiful teenage girl and the whipping of her handsome Syrian boyfriend on his bare back 100 lashes until he became a wheelchair-bound, disabled person for the rest of his life. Therefore, if her friend Nadia is killed in those airstrikes, Irshad's memory will be haunted again by the blood of another innocent foreign friend of hers. However, her American boyfriend warned her over the phone that not to live among these terrorists after the supreme leader was arrested. He told her that the leaders of Al-Qaeda and the Taliban would try to find out who was the informant who revealed the hiding place of their top leader, Mullah Sheikh Mohammed Noor al-Faransawi. If they found out that she was the master of capture, they would definitely kill her in a brutal way. Irshad accepted the advice of her American lover and decided to leave Swat Valley as soon as possible. But she does not know what to do with the two small sons of her American friend Nadia. After some thinking, she decided to take the two kids and flee from those strongholds of terrorists. Whatever happened to their mother, Irshad does not want these two boys to live there and grow up as terrorists and end up killing themselves along with many innocent people like her sons Abu Bakr and Omar did. So she went back to her former tent, took her American friend's sons and fled under cover of night. She met an unemployed Pakistani man and bribed him into pretending to be her husband. The man became very happy when he saw the huge amount of money that the British white woman had given him. Therefore, he agreed to make a fake halal marriage contract with her with the help of an imam from a nearby mosque and two male Muslim witnesses. She told him that she would pay him twice as much as if he took her to where she planned to travel with her two sons. Although she married him in paper only, Irshad never treated him as her lawful husband or sought of having sex with him. Her fake marriage with him reminded her about the Muhallil husband whom she was forced by her ex-husband Mustafa and his uncle to marry him to legalize her pussy, for her husband to remarry her again after divorcing her 3 times. Until this day, the Australian woman could not erase from her memory the horrific rape she was subjected to by the ugly Muhallil Somali man in her room in front of her Saudi husband, who was sitting at the door while she was being raped as if he was a bimp to the man he bid to fuck his wife. Fortunately, 2 weeks after she fled the strongholds of Islamic terrorists, the Australian widow Irshad learned through the media that her American friend Nadia Noor and the 3 other Muslim wives of Mullah Sheikh Mohammed Noor al-Faransawi had been arrested with him and flown to Afghanistan. The US government refused to allow the Afghan authorities to imprison Mullah Mohammed Noor al-Faransawi. Accordingly, the captured terrorist leader was transferred to a prison in the United States. Irshad heard this news after she reached Islamabad city. The news was both a relief and a source of sadness for her. Once again, Irshad saw that the CIA agents had not kept their promise to send her friend Nadia as the hero and not as the wife of dangerous Muslim terrorists. Because of this, she called her white American boyfriend and asked him to put her in touch with the top CIA agents she had spoken to before. Once she spoke to some of these senior agents, Irshad learned that she was entitled to collect $50 million for revealing the hiding place of the notorious French terrorist, alias Mullah Sheikh Mohammed Noor al-Faransawi. Moreover, they assured her that her American friend Nadia would not go to any prison upon her arrival in her native United States, but that she will be received with honor. She is also told that Nadia Noor is likewise entitled to a $50 million reward for cooperating with the US Marines in capturing a dangerous Frenchman who became a top Islamic terrorist leader in Pakistan and Afghanistan. As for the other 3 Muslim wives of the French terrorists, they have been handed over to the Afghani police. The evil terrorist Mullah Mohammed Noor al-Faransawi is being held in a maximum security prison in the States awaiting his trial. After revealing these details to her, the CIA agents told the Australian widow to go to the US Embassy in Islamabad city and get a free plane ticket and a visa to the state. Then she informed the agents about the 2 sons of her brave American friend Nadia and asked them to give the 2 kids 2 passports and 2 visas to enter their mother's homeland, the United States of America. The CIA agents accepted her request and promised to arrange their travel papers as soon as possible. A month later, the Australian widow and her friend Nadia's 2 children arrived in New York. She had delayed her trip until the children of her friend had obtained their travel documents and visas from the US Embassy in Islamabad. At the New York International Airport, they were received by some officials from the government. The representatives informed Irshad that she had been booked into a 5-star hotel for a week. All costs for her stay and other expenses will be covered by the government. However, she is expected to leave the USA in just 1 week. Under no circumstances can she extend her stay for more than 7 days. They also handed to the Australian woman Rashad Shamari a check for $50 million at the same international airport when she landed with the two children of her friend Nadia. With regard to the two sons of her American friend, they promised to transfer them to their mother, who at that time lived with her parents in the city of Chicago. The Australian widow Rashad was disappointed by the restrictions the U.S. government placed on her residency. She has a 6-month visa issued to her in Islamabad by the U.S. Embassy. Why don't they want her to stay more than 7 days? She expected to be greeted with wreaths of flowers and honors. She thought there would be media coverage of her arrival at the New York International Airport, but then she found out that they didn't even want her to stay more than a week on American soil. They refused to let her take her American friend's two children to their mother. Why don't they want her to meet her friend and spend 6 months in the USA? During her journey from Islamabad to New York, Rashad made many plans and had many sweet dreams. She planned to stay in the United States and compete with the Canadian government for custody of her 6 children. She even expected the US government to help her get her children back. She also wants to meet her American friend Nadia Noor and spend quality time with her. Alas, all those plans and dreams vanished on her arrival at the New York International Airport. The Australian woman realized that if she followed the dictates of the American government, her name would be associated with terrorists forever. Wherever she goes, she will be treated as a treacherous and evil Muslima woman and is always described as the wife of a notorious Arab terrorist Muslim man who participated in the cowardly terrorist attacks of September 11 in America, which led to the deaths of 3,000 innocent Americans. Even the name of our American friend Nadia will always stink with the reputation of being the wife of the evil terrorist leader, Mohammed Noor al-Faransawi, who has ever been at the surface of the earth, and in his wickedness he comes after God's alleged prophet Muhammad and Osama bin Laden. Her children will be treated badly wherever they go and whatever they become in American society. The Australian widow Rashad believed that the CIA expected her and her American friend Nadia to be satisfied with the huge amounts of money they gave them for revealing the hiding place of the notorious terrorist Mohammed Noor al-Faransawi. For Rashad, her dignity and reputation are more precious than silver and gold. Therefore, she decided to never leave the United States until her name and that of her American friend were separated from the stigma of being the wives of notorious terrorists, until the government of the United States of America apologized to her for imprisoning her for 4 years in Guantanamo Bay Detention Center among those Islamic terrorists, and she never committed a crime. Until her children are returned to her, she will not go anywhere without them. To achieve these goals, the angry Australian woman decided to go to the media and expose such a cover-up abuses. She wants everyone to know how she and her American friend risked their lives to help the CIA capture the dangerous terrorist Mullah Sheikh Mohammed Noor al-Faransawi. She also wants the world to know that some senior CIA agents did not keep their promise to receive Nadia Noor and her with honor. And instead of giving them credibility, the CIA agents attributed it to two cowardly Western women who refused to be named for fear of terrorists. Moreover, she would like the Americans to know that rather than allowing her to stay 6 months in their country, because she is having a visa for 6 months, the CIA agents want her to return to her native Australia as soon as possible, as if her extended stay of more than a week on American soil might lead to something more terrible than the cowardly terrorist attacks of September 11, in which her cowardly husband participated. Chapter 35, her first controversial species. Widowed Australian woman Irshad Shamari found the New York Times contact number in her phone book at the front desk of her hotel. She tried several times to speak to someone, but each time her call was forwarded to the answering machine registered to the phone. Irshad learned from that recorded message that her call might not be answered for a long time. She worries that if she leaves a message, they might not get back to her for weeks. Then she looked for another newspapers but got the same response. After that, she started searching for some TV channels or radio stations. Most of the popular channels such as CNN and Fox News suffer from the same problem. As a result, the Australian widow Irshad Shamari is about to give up the idea of exposing the CIA agents who failed to keep their promise to her and her American friend Nadia Noor. But suddenly an idea popped into her mind and she decided to work on it. She felt as if the idea is a heavenly revelation inspired by the Holy Spirit to her. She decides to head to the nearest police station and file a complaint against these CIA agents who have disappointed her and her American friend. She expected the police to either consider her a fraud and kick her out, or take her complaint seriously and act on it. Either way, she understood that this was her last open option. Howbeit, the American police did not respond as the Australian widow Irshad had expected. They did not expel her and did not accept her complaint. They first asked her to provide evidence that she was behind the arrest of the notorious Muslim terrorist leader Mullah Sheikh Mohammed Noor al-Faransawi. At first, Irshad tried to prove her claim by showing her air ticket and American visa from Islamabad to New York, issued to her by the U.S. Embassy in Pakistan. The police told her that the ticket did not show that it was issued by whom and who paid for her air ticket. Even a visa can be issued to anyone who has received permission to enter America. Once again, the Australian woman Irshad would have given up on her plan to sue the CIA office and return to her hotel if it weren't for a second thought popped into her mind out of nowhere. She shouted her thought as loudly as she could, as if she was afraid it might fade out of her mind at any moment. She showed the police a copy of the $50 million check she had received from the U.S. government as a reward for revealing the hiding place of the dangerous foreign terrorist Mullah Sheikh Mohammed Noor al-Faransawi. Consequently, the U.S. police found it difficult to dismiss her complaint. In the United States of America, police officers love nothing more than publicity. Therefore, once Irshad filed her complaint against some top CIA agents who refused to fulfill their promise to honor her and her American friend Nadia, the matter leaked to the media. All the newspapers, magazines, and TV channels that Irshad could not have been able to contact before reported her grievance on their front pages, and it became breaking news on almost every television channel in America. It was broadcast by CNN and Fox News. Other international channels, such as BBC World News TV and Al Jazeera Satellite Channel and Arabia TV, Radio Monte Carlo, and France 24, also picked up the news and circulated it around the world. Accordingly, the Australian widow Shadi Shamir was interviewed by several journalists and other broadcasters after news of her complaint reached the American tabloid media. Accordingly, overnight, the Australian woman Shadi Shamir became famous, and everyone in the media and elsewhere wanted to meet and talk to her. Some human rights activists, American feminists, high school teachers, and university professors approached her and conducted interviews with her. She was praised for her courage and willingness to help the American Marines and other NATO troops in a dangerous place like Swat Valley in Pakistan, where there are strongholds of Islamic terrorists. At first, Irshad is unwilling to reveal to the media her tragic past life in the Muslim world when she lived 3 years with her Muslim husband in Saudi Arabia and 7 years in the Mujahideen camps in Afghanistan. She just focused on her recent problem with the CIA. Some media professionals from Canada and Australia connected the dots and got to know who Irshad was. They revealed to the outside world that her late Saudi Muslim husband, Mustafa Shammari, was among those 19 Muslim terrorists who took part in the Kawali terrorist attacks on New York on September 11, 2001, which led to the deaths of 3,000 innocent Americans. This subsequent information made her case sensational news and promoted the media to pressure the CIA to answer many urgent and pressing questions. Why did the CIA imprisoned the Australian woman for 4 years in Guantanamo Bay Detention Center for not committing any crime other than marrying a Muslim man? Why did the Canadian authorities deprive her of her 6 children? Why did the CIA agents who paid her a bounty of $50 million ask her to leave America in a week's time? Why was she not received as a hero and not as the wife of a terrorist as promised by them? Why she was treated as a traitor rather than a heroine? Why was she not praised and honored for revealing the hideout of the notorious terrorist Mullah Sheikh Mohammed Noor al-Faransawi? These questions gave the US government and the Canadian government real nightmares. Shortly thereafter, the Australian woman received official apologies from the US and Canadian governments. The CIA department could be able to clear itself of the later accusation on the grounds that the informer's name would not be released to the public for safety purposes. When an informant assists police in thwarting a terrorist plot, it is CIA policy not to reveal his name to the public, even if that person wishes to be identified. Regarding Irshad's imprisonment of 4 years in Guantanamo Bay Detention Center without committing a crime, the CIA said that she was arrested in Canada due to her immigrating to the country under a fake name, Iman Atta, and falsely claiming to be American citizen when she was not. Moreover, her association with terrorists for many years made her vulnerable to arrest and detention for legal accountability, like any other Muslim terrorist. Therefore, the CIA believed that the Australian Muslim woman, Irshad Shamari, did not deserve honor or an apology at that time. But her later heroic action with the help of the CIA, American Marines, and NATO troops in capturing Mullah Sheikh Mohammed Noor al-Faransawi proved her claim that she was innocent and had nothing to do with what her coward husband did in New York on 9/11. While the Canadian government not only apologized to Irshad for handing her over to the CIA, and got her imprisoned in Guantanamo Bay Detention Center, but agreed to settle the matter by paying her $10 million in compensation. Furthermore, the Toronto government allowed her to claim custody of her 6 children as quickly and easily as possible. In addition, her refugee status was restored and she was resettled as a persecuted refugee Muslim woman in Canada. Irshad immediately moved to Toronto City and took back all of her 6 children. This time she did not enter Canada like a thief in the night and live incognito as she did before. Soon after her arrival, she began speaking out publicly and in the media against the teachings of the Quran and Hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad, which she believes are behind all the terrorist attacks, assaults, persecution, abuse, violence, and misogyny against Muslim women. She also spoke openly about her bitter experience in Saudi Arabia. He spoke about the abuse of young Saudi girls as children through the vicious practice of female genital mutilation, FGM. Authentic hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad justified such kind of barbaric and inhuman practices against female children when they were at the age of 4 or 5. The Australian woman also referred to the case of her eldest daughter Aisha, who was subjected to such brutal procedure of FGM when she was 4 years old. The same practice of circumcision was carried out on her other 2 daughters in Afghanistan against her wishes. She also spoke about the evil practice of child marriage of small Muslim girls, which is also based on the hadiths of the Prophet of Islam, as well as a verse from the Quran in Surah Al-Talaq 65 verse 4. Irshad gave the example of the Prophet Muhammad's scandalous marriage to the child bride of his friend Abu Bakr, whom he married when she was 6 years old, and began to rape her and abuse her physically when she reached the age of 9. Her daughter Aisha was also married at the age of 10 to an old Afghani man without her mother's knowledge or consent. The Muslim man who married her is 70 years old, and that is older than her grandfather. She also showed the scars of severe beatings on her body at the hands of her late Muslim husband, who had been brutally beating her and violating the sanctity of her body in abnormal and humiliating sexual ways over a period of 7 years. He even sodomized her against her wish. She referred to the Quranic verse that allows man to beat his Nash's wife, that is mean the disobedient wife, or as a father chastise his rebellious daughter in Surah An-Nisa 4 verse 34. The Australian widow Irshad was not limited to speaking only in Canada. She was invited by some respected people in France to come to Paris and talk about Islamic misogynistic teachings on women and Islamic terrorists. Upon her arrival, she gave 2 consecutive speeches in one of the most spacious halls in the French capital. Her talk about the abuse of Muslim women sparked a lot of controversy and resentment among Muslims. Muslim men and women alike in France accused her of lying and fabricating hadiths about their unfallible Prophet Muhammad. In her sermons, Irshad elaborated on the status of women in Islam. One of the phrases she said that annoyed Muslim men as well as women was that Islam treats women like animals or something lower than animals. She cited some hadiths of the Messenger of Allah Muhammad in his saying, a woman is like a goat and a she-camel because everything is mounted. That means Allah created woman like any female animal for the man to climb over her body and fuck her. All those female creatures like goats, she camels, and donkeys, and women are made to climb on and have sex by their male counterparts. This bad hadith shows us how Muhammad reduced the woman to a sexual being created by God for the man to climb her body and fuck her as the dog fucks its feet. Muhammad also said the dog, the donkey, and the woman invalidate the woman's prayer if they pass in front of him while he's praying, and for this reason they cut off the prayer between the worshipper and the Qibla, or a direction of prayer for Muslims. This offensive and misogynistic hadith intended to show the woman as a defiled creature and therefore as impure invalidates the man's prayer. There is a verse in the Quran that compares a woman to feces, and that is why she defiles a man and validates his pollution. O you have believed, do not approach prayer when you are intoxicated until you know what you are saying. And if you are sick or on a journey, or one of you comes from the stool, or you have touched woman and you cannot find water, then do tayammum, or ablution on soil. So wipe your faces and your hands with sand. Indeed, God is forgiven. Surah An-Nisa 4, verse 43. Abu Umayma narrated, the messenger of God, may God's prayers and peace be upon him, said, everyone whom God enters into paradise marries 72 wives, 2 of whom are virgins of the wide eye, and 70 of his inheritance are from the inhabitants of hell, of the infidel women, and all of them have sexual organs that are intensely lustful for sex, and he has an erect penis that does not paint, and the virgin always has a pussy that craves for fucking. She has a lustful pussy, and he has a long dick like bulverized palm tree, and the virgin of paradise has a large butt or ass that is a mile wide. This vulgar hadith reveals to us how the mentality of the alleged prophet of God Muhammad bin Abdullah bin Kilab was preoccupied with women and practicing sexual intercourse with them. The second speech of the Australian woman Irshad angered the Muslims and pushed them to fill the streets of Paris, demonstrating against those who invited the infidel Australian Christian woman impersonating herself as a Muslim woman to the country and gave her a platform to insult their beautiful religion, Islam, the religion of peace, and their infallible Prophet Muhammad. They claim that there is no other religion in the whole world that honors women and puts them in the best social status as Islam did. In this speech, the white woman Irshad spoke about Muslim terrorists. According to her, the Muslim terrorist is a helpless case because he was indoctrinated by the verses of the Quran and hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad, which made him a very dangerous creature for humanity. It is impossible to convince a Muslim terrorist that he is wrong. The Muslim terrorist is true and loyal to his religion, and everything he does is justified by citing religious authority based on the teaching of the Quran and the hadiths of his Prophet. The Sudanese Muslim scholar Dr. Ahmed Al-Mustafa Ad-Dali said in one of his radio programs that he broadcasts every Sunday from Washington, D.C., USA, no Muslim scholar can dare say that Osama bin Laden is not a true Muslim. According to Dr. Ad-Dali, Osama bin Laden practiced Islam as taught by the Prophet Muhammad to the Muslim community in the 7th century AD. Another white Australian woman who converted to Islam and became committed to the true teachings of the Quran and the Hadith said, the Taliban Muslims practice the pure and true form of Islam taught by the unfallible Prophet of God Muhammad to his early followers, and so untainted by subsequent generations of Muslim leaders and scholars. The same white foreign woman, faithful to her Islamic religion, said, "War on terror is the war on Islam." This means that she understood that Muslim terrorists are the true followers of Islam. The so-called terrorists of ISIS, Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab, and the Muslim Brotherhood practice their religion the way their Prophet Muhammad wanted them to do. The so-called Prophet of God taught his Muslim followers to hate Jews and Christians and not to allow them to hold any leadership positions, and call them brothers of apes and pigs. According to the Prophet's command to his followers, whenever a Muslim meets a Christian or a Jew on the road, he is not supposed to greet him or try to make to greet him, but try to make it difficult for him to walk down the street. So Islam requires a true Muslim to curse Jews and Christians and consider them to be descendants of apes and pigs, as the Prophet Muhammad did with the Jewish of Medina, the three tribe of Bani Qanayqah, Bani Nadir, and Bani Qurayza. According to Islamic law, Jewish and Christians are not allowed to own weapons and marry a Muslim woman, but Muslim men can marry Jewish and Christian women. Jewish and Christian were not allowed to ride horses or camels. They were the two noble animals in Muhammad's time. Christians living in the Middle East or North Africa are not allowed to build new churches in Muslim countries or to rebuild their existing churches. Likewise, Jews and Christians must wear humiliating clothes that distinguish them from Muslims, cut the front hairs of their heads, walk in the streets with half-closed eyes, and accept abuse and mistreatment by Muslims on the roads. Muslim, Christian, and Jewish women are supposed to wear one shoe in one foot and leave one foot without shoe and walk on the hot sands. The Muslim, the Christian, and Jewish women are supposed to tie belt in their body, which rings whenever she walks on the street, so Muslims know that she's infidel and not a Muslim woman. This will sometimes lead to harassment and rape, gang rape of the Jewish or Christian woman. They should have lower doors in their homes with no lights on them. They are not allowed to preach their religions to Muslims, while Muslims must force their religion on them if they refuse to accept Islam or obey the jizya. If a Muslim becomes a Christian, must be killed as an apostate, whereas if a Christian becomes a Muslim, must receive money from the Islamic treasury. Likewise, a Muslim man is allowed to marry a Christian woman, while a Christian man is not allowed to marry a Muslim woman. According to Irshad, the best way to deal with the Muslim terrorist is to eliminate him. He is like a cancer that, if it is not removed, affects our other parts of the body. She also believes that a Muslim terrorist is more dangerous if he is captured and imprisoned. He will pass his incurable contagious disease on to other prison inmates who were either Christians, atheists, or agnostics. It has become a common phenomenon in Western countries, especially in the United States. The notorious criminals are now and then converted to Islam by their Muslim inmates, and when they get out, they become homegrown terrorists or travel to the Middle East and join the modern Islamic terrorist groups. Today, there are 86 Islamic terrorist groups in the world. The white Australian woman Irshad illustrated her point by likening a Muslim terrorist to a computer virus. If we leave it in our system, it will destroy it, and if we isolate it The virus will always be a threat. The only way to deal with a terrorist is to remove him from human society. Therefore, the Australian woman Irshad Shambari strongly supports NATO's war on terror in Afghanistan and the US-led coalition against the Islamic State Caliphate of ISIS group in Syria and Iraq. Irshad concluded her speech by saying that it is the duty of non-Muslim forces to fight, defeat, and destroy Islamic terrorism wherever it exists. For her, Muslims should not be allowed to implement Sharia law even in their own Islamic lands and countries. There are about 55 Muslim majority countries in the world. These countries must be secularized and prevented from becoming Islamic countries. Even the curricula of the schools in Muslim countries should be secularized and should never be allowed to teach their religion in the schools as public schools in the West. The lukewarm, so-called moderate Muslim should only be commanded and encouraged to stay that way. After listening to her speeches in France on the abuse of women in Islam and Islamic terrorism, it seemed to many people that the fearless Australian woman Irshad Shambari was created by God for a noble cause. No one in the history of mankind dared to challenge or question these Islamic beliefs without finding himself fighting with his hands and teeth against the great Satan, who is called in Arabic the damning Iblis. For more than 14 centuries, the world has been terrorized and feared by the Islamic teaching of terrorism and the law of apostasy. If anyone refuses to accept Muhammad as the messenger of God, he exposes himself to physical annihilation. Then his wife, children, property, and livestock must be seized by the Muslim Mujahideen. If any human mind dared to criticize the teaching of the alleged prophet of God Muhammad, he would be subject to terrorist attacks from the Muslims of the world. If any one of the followers of the alleged messenger of Allah had renounced his religion, he would be judged an apostate and put to death. By using these two doctrines, jihad against the infidel to spread Islam by the sword or by violence today and kill the apostates on the basis of the law of apostasy, Satan has terrorized and terrified people for a long time and made criticism of these Islamic teachings taboo.